As we are growing in wisdom and compassion, very frequently we think that means we're supposed to be doormats. When people are exhibiting bad behavior around us, that it's loving for us to just put up with that. It is important that we recognize that's not love. It's neither loving to them, nor to ourselves, nor to the other people around us when we put up with that. Sometimes the most loving response in a situation is no. Anybody that's a parent knows that sometimes the most loving thing you can say to your child is no. Just because they want something doesn't mean it's good for them. And in the same regard, when we're around people that are misbehaving or acting out, it's not good for us. And it's also not good for them. Often, the best thing we can do is to detach ourselves from that person, from the situation, or from the behavior. There are those rare instances in my life where I've had to have a complete no contact rule, because that was the most loving thing I could do for both of us. And that's an extreme version of a detachment, but it's still a loving one. It's still loving. The idea that just because somebody else says that's not loving doesn't make it true. Of course, the person you're detaching from doesn't want you to detach from them. On one hand, maybe they still love you and all of that. But on another hand, their toxic behavior is something that they're addicted to. They enjoy what they get out of their interaction with you, even though it's not healthy. So, of course, they don't want that. Of course, the child doesn't want you to say no when they ask for more candy. Doesn't react well when you say no, you have to go to bed. Just because another person says no, you have to keep me in your life doesn't mean that it's true. And it doesn't mean that you're shutting them out of your heart. In fact, it's important that you don't shut them from your heart, that you recognize that the best thing sometimes to do is to say no. To detach from somebody's toxic behavior, whether it's temporarily or long periods of time, when it's done out of love, is a healing gesture. Don't think of it as kind or unkind. Don't think of it as a way of condemning them or judging them. It's really about doing what's the most healthy thing in the moment, the most loving thing in the moment. And what's most important is emotional detachment from the harmful effects of other people's behavior. Emotional detachment from the harmful effects of other people's behavior. When you allow yourself to see situations more clearly and more realistically, you can understand what your most loving response will be. And that's another reason why it's important to have a relationship with your inner guide, because sometimes detaching isn't the best thing to do. Sometimes it's important for you to stay in there with that person because there's stuff that you guys have to work out. And so that's not what we're talking about here. But there are types of toxic behavior that there's no working it out. There's no working it out. If somebody's an active addict or alcoholic, if somebody's into rage, if somebody's violent, if somebody's spewing their toxic psychic energy everywhere they go, as we get more in tune with the invisible aspects of our existence, we realize there's a huge toxic dumping ground sometimes, and we just put up with it because we can't put our finger on it. We feel like we don't have the right to detach because there's nothing physical and tangible that we can say is the reason. But as we get more in tune to our non-physical reality, there are sometimes very valid reasons for having a detachment from a person when they can't control their habits of dumping toxic waste all over you. Again, we're not condemning the person. Very frequently, they cannot help themselves. It's a disease on some level. It's not like they get up one morning and say, I'm going to be toxic today. It's not that they can help themselves, but you can't help them either if you're allowing them to do that, if you're allowing them to abuse you. And it is a form of abuse when people come from the point of view that they can act however they want, and you're just going to have to put up with it. Accepting that other people's toxicity, their actions, and their vibrations are their responsibility. It's their responsibility. And when we wash our hands of taking responsibility for the vibrations and the behaviors of other people and give them the gift of their own consequences, we are actually being more loving to them than if we just become that doormat and let them do whatever they want. When we learn to have a loving detachment with somebody, we have to then also look at ourselves, having to let go of our own obsessions with their behavior. I wonder what they're doing. I wonder what they're thinking. I wonder if they ate. Did they go to bed? Did they go to work today? If somebody's in jail again, do I have to go bail them out? Obsessing over making sure they're okay. We have to learn how to let go of those obsessions and let them have their own consequences, which can seem cruel if we're used to thinking of compassion as being a doormat. And they're used to us thinking of compassion as being their doormat. And so they will want to use those things against us. Well, you've done it before. You've always done it before. So when you start putting your foot down, and you create those boundaries and you detach from them, they're possibly going to act out even more. And that's part of it. You have to let that happen and detach from that as well. Learning how we can focus on our own happiness and our own equilibrium, our own physical health, emotional health, mental and spiritual and psychic health. Prioritizing our own health over other people's behavior can seem very selfish to us. The ego would rather we be involved in self-destructive behavior than be healthy. And so it's going to very quickly condemn you for taking over your own life and prioritize your own happiness and well-being over other people's toxic behavior. Somehow we've convinced ourselves that I'm a loving person, so I just have to put up with that. That's not true. That's backwards. That's upside down thinking. And when we take a stand, it's very frequent that both our own egos and theirs will respond. And we just have to be okay with that and stick to our own understanding of what love really is. And in some circumstances, love means detaching. The idea of detachment as a way of fostering dignity and self-respect is something that isn't discussed frequently enough. The idea that we could prioritize our own dignity and our own self-respect over the behavior of other people is seen as very selfish, and what it is loving. When you learn how to detach from other people's toxic behavior, you are telling yourself in the universe that you are not going to suffer due to other people's actions or reactions. You are making a very clear decision and taking a stand and putting your foot down that you are no longer suffering due to other people's actions or reactions. You are no longer going to allow yourself to be abused or used under the guise of helping someone. You are no longer going to do things that others can do and should do for themselves. When you learn this, and you can detach, and you can do it in a loving way, you no longer are as prone to your own neurotic behaviors, such as trying to control or manipulate other people. Because their toxic behavior, if you're putting up with it, is a two-way street. Because then you get to control them. You get to manipulate them. You get to play games with them. So when you put a stop to that on your end of it, you keep your own side of the street clean, then you're doing something good for yourself and for them, even though they won't see it in the moment, usually, if they're used to you acting a certain way. You no longer are going to cover up for somebody else's mistakes, make excuses for other people's poor decisions. You're no longer going to try to prevent crises from happening that are the natural course of events through the law of cause and effect. If somebody doesn't go to work, and they get fired, that's how it works. But you rushing in to fix that or change that for them, no more. Not if you're learning how to say no. Not if you're learning how to put your foot down. Not if you're learning how to detach from their toxic behavior in a loving way. When we can learn how to shift our focus to our personal well-being rather than trying to take care of other people, we are less prone to falling victim to this toxicity. And it's a self-oriented path, not a selfish one. It's a loving path. For one thing, when you can prioritize your own happiness and you can prioritize your own well-being, you are doing the proverbial putting your own oxygen mask on first, so you are in a position to be helpful to other people. That's one thing. And another thing, so many people are looking to you as an example for behavior. They will model their behavior, at least on some level, whether it's subliminal or not, on what you do. And if you are showing an example of prioritizing your own personal well-being over allowing somebody else to abuse you, even on a subtle level, you are helping people in a way they'll never be helped by reading a book, because they're seeing that behavior modeled. And they can see how positive that is. They can feel how positive that is, how healthy that is, and they'll want to do it themselves. When you allow people to face their own consequences and removing yourself from it, that's huge. It can be challenging. If you think it's my responsibility to make sure that they're okay, that's not the way that you make sure that they're okay. You make sure that they're okay by giving them back their power to make their own mistakes and have to clean up their own mistakes. Sometimes it's appropriate to help people clean up their mistakes, but frequently it's not. Frequently, it's more loving to just detach, pull back, and let them figure it out. Some of the most important lessons I've learned and amazing growth that I've experienced has occurred when nobody was there to help me. And I had to figure it out. I had to figure it out all by myself. That's when I learned how to get in touch with my inner guide. That's when I learned how to grow up and have some accountability for my own actions. But had I had somebody rushing in and fixing and cleaning up all my mistakes for me, who knows how long it would have taken me to get to that point. So in retrospect, I'm very grateful to anybody who said no to helping me when I was going through what I had to go through. And now I'm going to return the favor by not allowing anybody to abuse me, by not allowing anybody to lean on me in ways that are not appropriate. Now, that's not to say that we're not there to help people when they're in trouble. That's not to say that we're not there to help our neighbor or our friends or our family when they are in trouble. I'm talking about those toxic individuals who manipulate us, who are nefarious, who are obviously in some sort of diseased mind that want to do nothing more than to cause chaos and to indulge in their unhealthy behavior because they know they have an ally in us that will clean up for them. Or when those people that like to spray their negativity all over us and abuse us and take us for granted. You know the litany of things that can happen when those kinds of people are allowed to run amok and nobody says no to them. You can't wait for other people to do it. You have to do it. And sometimes it's just a matter of starting with one complete sentence. No. No is a complete sentence. And that is a wonderful lesson from the card in the tarot called the Hanged Man. Your sacred power of no. You put your foot down and you flip things right side up. Because if you're putting up with toxic behavior, you're looking at the world upside down. And you're just hanging by a foot, just like that hanged man. Instead of doing that, we ask for help. We ask for guidance from our inner guide. And we ask that we see things right side up and we realize that we're not hanging. We're not hanging. We're putting up with. We are involved in their behavior. And we can put our foot down and say, we're not playing this anymore. We are getting better first. And if we can get better first, it's going to be a lot easier for them to get better if they decide to do that. And if not, they will go on their merry way and find somebody else that's going to play their game with them. But it's not going to be you, because you've learned that it's up to you to prioritize your own health, your own happiness, your own well-being over theirs. That is all you can be responsible for in the ultimate scheme of things. Because you trying to help them, not only is it destroying you, but it's not doing them any good. It's just playing into their unhealthy game. So it's up to us to recognize that when it happens and to be courageous and to call upon that inner power and learn that we can say no and we can mean no when we say no, and that we don't have to put up with it and we don't have to be involved in it. And if it comes down to it on very extreme cases, we cannot have anything more to do with that person if it comes to that. And that's still the most loving response than putting up with and being abused by them. That's our power. It's important that we use that power when necessary. Not to assume that just everybody that's in need is being toxic. That's not what we're talking about. You know what I'm talking about. Those particular individuals whose lives are chaotic and they want to ruin yours as a part of their own chaotic patterns. You're not going to put up with that anymore. You've got the power to say no, and you can use it. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. Until next time, blessed be.